Last week we showed you a lot of the new players coming into the league who were going to make an impact, and no one more so than the #1 draft pick Peyton Manning of the Indianapolis Colts. And Peyton got off to a pretty tough start against the Miami Dolphins on Sunday. His first game as a pro, Peyton was introduced to Dan Marino, the veteran quarterback of Miami, who put them on the board first. Arondé Gadsden making the catch on the 10 and then fighting his way in for an early touchdown. But the big story for the Fish was that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was getting yardage on the ground against Indianapolis. He went over 100 yards, got the touchdown. That was good news for Miami. The other good news was that they picked off Peyton Manning 3 times, the third of those Terrell Buckley, his second interception of the game, and he returns that one in for a touchdown. Tough start for Peyton Manning. And the final score of that game, 24-15, Miami Dolphins over the Indianapolis Colts. A good start for the Fish in the AFC East. Buffalo and San Diego meant Ryan Leaf, the #2 pick in the draft, was making his debut. Leaf, 6'5", 260 pounds, having trouble getting down for the handoff to Natron Means, but he came back. He's got great touch for such a big guy. Brian Still makes his touchdown catch, taking the place of Tony Touchdown Martin. Leaf gets his first TD. The new quarterback in Buffalo is Rob Johnson, who they picked up in the offseason from Jacksonville. But Johnson got his bell rung there, out with a concussion, and that meant Doug Flutie, 8 years in the Canadian League, comes back for his NFL return, and little Flutie is still the magic Flutie. Look at the touch on that ball. In for the touchdown to Andre Reed. Doug Flutie led Buffalo where they were in a position to win. Steve Christie had missed a 21-yard field goal early in the fourth quarter. He missed that 34-yarder, which would have won the game. Doug Flutie doesn't make the magic comeback, and Buffalo go down to San Diego 16-13. Now, a lot of people were picking Tampa Bay to go all the way this year. They had an NFC Central battle against the Vikings, and it was the Vikings rookie Randy Moss who made the big impression. Moss slid all the way down to the 21st pick because of his off-field problems in college. But Brad Johnson, the former London Monarch, who's a real popular guy around here, threw 4 touchdown passes. That first one to Chris Carter, this one to Moss, who makes a great second chance grab. Another one to Moss, and you'll see Johnson thread this one right in. When Carter, Jake Reed, and Moss are all out there, you've got to cover somebody man-to-man, and he'll beat you. Carter got a second TD, 4 for Brad Johnson, and a 31-7 rout for the Vikings over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, another rout that we weren't necessarily expecting, Seattle against Philadelphia, Ricky Waters against his old team, but the Seahawks put the pressure on Bobby Hoying right from the start, and Sean Springs, the cornerback, intercepted a Hoying pass, started celebrating 20 yards from the end zone and took it all the way in. Meanwhile, Warren Moon, who's almost as old as Mark Webster at 41, he's in good form. Joey Galloway making that catch, 1 of 2 TDs for Joey Galloway, who looks like this could be his breakthrough year. Meanwhile, Bobby Hoying was getting a nice taste of the turf in Seattle. Sack after sack for him, and in the Battle of the Birds, the Seahawks beat the Eagles. Final score, 38-0. And a Dixie Derby, Carolina and Atlanta. Well, it's the same old story for Carolina. Kerry Collins having lots of problems on offense. That ball was a touchdown. Receiver can't hold on to it. Turnover to the Falcons. Good news for the Falcons. Chris Chandler stayed healthy for the whole game. Remember, last season they were 7-3 in games where Chandler started and lasted till the end. They were 0-6 when he didn't. Now, the bad news for the Falcons, Kevin Green sacked Chandler 3 times. 6 sacks overall for Carolina. If they don't protect Chandler better through the season, it's going to be a long season for Atlanta and a short one for Chris Chandler. But he stays in this game. He hits the touchdown pass, and the final score, 19-14, Atlanta over Carolina.
So there you go, a bit about young Warren Moon in a moment, but let's talk about some of the other kids there first, Mike. You mentioned you got one
team older than the San Francisco 49ers, who are hosting the New York Jets, and this one turned into a real offensive battle. Steve Young and Glenn Foley throwing touchdown after touchdown. The good news for the Niners is Jerry Rice looks to be back in form after 2 knee ops last season. Steve Mariucci certainly thinks so. If he's got a healthy Rice, it'll make a big difference. The game went into OT, and with 4 minutes left in overtime, Garrison Hurst started out on a little trap play off right guard and took it 96 yards for the game-winning touchdown. A little bit of arm tackling there that Bill Parcells will not be happy about, but Garrison 96 yards for the winning TD. And the veteran 49ers, last year, remember their opening game, everyone got hurt. It was a tough one for them. This time they win 36-30 in OT. Now the Lions went up to Lambeau Field where the surface is grass, and Barry Sanders doesn't like that as much as turf, but it didn't bother Terry Fair at all. The rookie cornerback took a kickoff back, 101 yards for a touchdown, and that got Detroit back in the game. They were down 24-12 at that point. However, it didn't last all that long. Roel Preston, the man for the Packers, he got Glenn Milburn out of his kick return job with a great job in preseason, and Roel took this one 100 yards. He gave Terry Fair the extra 1 yard for a score, ducking, diving, chopping, sliding, weaving, bobbing, and taking it all the way in for the score. It was the end of the game. Another ho-hum effort for Brett Favre. Just a couple of touchdowns to Antonio Freeman, and the Pack roll again at Lambeau Field, 38-19. Now, the Baltimore Ravens were undefeated in preseason, but now they're playing the Pittsburgh Steelers. Jim Harbaugh reunited with Coach Ted Marchibroda in Baltimore, but Harbaugh had a tough day after Carnell Lake hit him and broke his middle finger. Ted Marchibroda not happy about that. You see him examining the finger. Eric Zier came in for the Ravens, but it was Cordell Stewart hitting Charles Johnson for the touchdown. Pittsburgh 20-13, winners over Baltimore. And still in the AFC Central, Tennessee and Cincinnati. The new quarterback for Cincinnati is former Steeler and Jet Neil O'Donnell. And Neil hit Darnay Scott for a touchdown early in the game. Steve McNair, the quarterback for the Houston Oilers, well, he got hurt and was out, and that brought in 38-year-old Dave Craig, who Mark Webster calls Kid. And Craig was playing and has, of course, Eddie George running behind him. George went in for the touchdown, and Craig showed that at 38, and after throwing only 4 passes in the whole of last season, he still got it, and he hit another former Pittsburgh Steeler, Yancey Thigpen, with that one for the catch. Eventually, it was a touchdown for Willie Davis, and then the defenses took over, and the Oilers shut down Cincinnati. Final score there, 23-14. More bad news for the Bengals. Kijana Carter, surprise, surprise, he's injured and out for the rest of the year.
There you go, more babies for you there. John Elway's up real soon. And also, when we get back after the break, we're looking at some... It's English, apparently.
Anyway, the Giants were playing the Redskins over in the NFC East. And the Giants, of course, without cornerback Jason Sehorn, but the good news for them was that Gus Frerotte was throwing the passes for the Redskins, so it didn't really matter. Interception followed interception. The only way that Gus wasn't going to throw an interception was to go off hurt. He hurt his wrist, he came back, and guess what he did? Yes, his third interception of the game. And that was Philippi Sparks for the touchdown. 2 interceptions for Frerotte on the game on consecutive passes. 8 for 12, 93 yards. Danny Cannell had not a bad game for the Giants. Arizona and Dallas, and Jake Plummer, he was sacked a whole lot last season. He's getting sacked a whole lot this season as well. You're holding on to the ball too long, Jake. Meanwhile, for Dallas, Emmitt Smith seems to be back 100% and healthy. He was chugging it out on the ground, but the story on the ground for Dallas was Troy Aikman. The quarterback legged it in for 2 scores, this one on the keeper around the end. Troy hasn't run like that in years. You know, Dallas has had a lot of bad offseason publicity, but new coach Chan Galley has them back 38-10 against Arizona. Emmitt Smith, 122 yards. Michael Irvin, 9 catches. On the schlock of the week, New Orleans and St. Louis, Dick Vermeil and Mike Ditka. The man for New Orleans, Lamar Smith. He catches this one and takes it for a touchdown. Later on in the game, he threw for a touchdown. Look at those moves. I think Mike Ditka might go to a single wing and put Lamar at tailback because he lost his starting quarterback, Billy Joe Hobart, when he was sacked here. Hobart's out for the season, probably. That means Danny Werfel's in at quarterback. Lamar Smith has a better arm than Danny Werfel does. Tony Banks, almost 300 yards passing. Isaac Bruce, 10 catches for the Rams, but it wasn't enough. Now, the Jacksonville Jaguars figured they would have an easier time with the Chicago Bears than they did. And Glenn Milburn, who the Packers cut, we told you about that just a couple of minutes ago. Well, Milburn took a kickoff back for a touchdown. Now watch, he's hit there and goes down. Nobody touches him when he's on the ground, so he gets up and they let him run in for the touchdown, claiming that he wasn't touched on the ground. But on the last drive of the game, Mark Brunell finally turned things up for the Jags, hit Jimmy Smith his 9th catch of the game. James Stewart had a touchdown on the ground. Brunell threw for 200 yards. When they had to, Jacksonville turned it on. And finally, the Chiefs against Oakland. It didn't matter whether Elvis Grbac or Rich Gannon was a quarterback. Grbac was one of the 8 quarterbacks who went out with injuries in this game. New coach John Gruden for Oakland couldn't really do very much because it was sack city. Jeff George under pressure the whole game. Derek Thomas, the main man on the pass rush, just leveling George time after time. Jeff says, well, if they're going to knock me down, I'm going to run. Problem was, he's running in the end zone. Derek Thomas's 6th sack of the game. That one for a safety. 2 more points for Kansas City. Elvis Grbac and Gannon, both at quarterback, you see, and George, 270 yards, but no scores.
Cheers, Mike. There you go. That is your kickoff weekend for you, and it was not a good weekend for the